Major funding for this program has been provided by the State Foundation on Culture and the Arts, the Hawaii Committee for the Humanities, the Robert E. Black Fund, a component fund of the Hawaii Community Foundation, Bank of Hawaii, and the Harold K. L. Castle Foundation. This program is a presentation of Hawaii Craftsmen in co-production with Hawaii Public Television.
There was a period in the history of mankind when making useful objects from the materials of nature was a matter of survival. Eventually, producing these objects also became a matter of tribute. On such occasions, only the best that one could create would suffice. This legacy of excellence was encouraged and protected because a family's reputation and the culture's vitality depended upon it. The prolific craftsmen and women of the Pacific fashioned works of great utility and imagination. For 100 generations, their skills flourished. Rarely were these traditional skills more highly evolved than in the Hawaiian Islands. The early Polynesian settlers to Hawaii found a string of untouched islands, each with unique natural treasures to be used. It was all a welcome sight to travelers from a wood, fiber, and stone culture. Lia i Kanu'u, strive for the best, could have summarized the Hawaiians' approach to life and to the objects they shaped from their new world. The Polynesians had a long tradition of designing and constructing useful items for everyday life. Going beyond that which was simply necessary, Hawaiians embellished their work with decorative symbols. The results were simply spectacular. Master after master refined their art, slowly, religiously, patiently. Had it not been for the inevitable approach of the Western world, the legacy of excellence that once sustained the Hawaiian culture might have survived until today.
Their canoes are as well made and highly finished as any in the world. As their tools are very few, constructing one of them must of course be a work of time. The double ones are of the same form as the single. Both vary greatly in size from 12 to 60 feet and sometimes more. The largest we saw measured 72 feet. All the double and many of the single ones carried a sail.
Westerners, seeing hundreds of Hawaiian canoes for the first time, were very impressed by the sheer number of them and by their elegant seaworthiness. Captain James Cook felt that the work of Hawaiian canoe makers surpassed European cabinet makers. Some accounts talk about an entire bay apparently so thick with canoes, it gave one the illusion you could walk across them to shore. There needed to be a great number of skilled craftsmen to supply that many vessels.
Well, obviously, without the canoe, there would be no Polynesia or no Polynesians. And so they're recognized today as the voyaging canoe in particular as the symbol of mutuality among Polynesians, all Polynesians. It seems as though each craft was organized into a guild, and each guild was led by the recognized master, the kahuna. The designer of the canoes, the kahuna kalaiva'a, was a very important person, sought after very much by chiefs, and they were richly rewarded for their products. There were times when their lives depended on having the best canoe designers, the best experts in each of the crafts. So excellence was necessary for survival. In addition to the need for survival, excellence was also necessary for the inner need of the artisan himself or of the patron, the inner need for the artistic, for the aesthetic. And so we have arts and crafts that were developed for survival needs, but which transcended that and became areas of cultural enrichment simply because people need art in their lives.
The natives of Hawaii have another dress appropriated to their chiefs and used on ceremonious occasions, consisting of a feathered cloak and helmet which, in point of beauty and magnificence, is perhaps nearly equal to that of any nation in the world. The helmet has a strong lining of wickerwork, capable of breaking the blow of any warlike instrument, and seems evidently designed for that purpose.
At the time of Cook's arrival, Hawaiian males of Ali'i blood wore feathered garments that signified their high status and mana, or spiritual power. To honor these chiefs, devout craftsmen tied feathers from thousands of elusive birds onto a netting of olona, one of the strongest natural fibers known to man. The most exceptional colors were reserved for those of highest rank. In battle, these garments vested the Ali'i with a shell of psychic protection and inspired one's warriors to follow. On ceremonial occasions, feathered capes and staffs elevated one by harnessing the godlike powers of creatures who sailed the winds.
The chiefs were considered to be representatives of the gods, and therefore any item that you made for a chief had to be the very best that could be produced. The chiefs were consumers. They consumed vast amounts of things, partly for necessity, partly for ornamental purposes, and partly because they wanted the items. All of these things began to change with Western contact, which began in 1778 when Captain Cook arrived.
Cook's maiden voyage to Hawaii marked the beginning of the wholesale substitution of foreign for native industries. Foreign materials and ideas brought dynamic change.
Their cloth is made much stronger and firmer than I ever before saw. But these people excel most in the art of dyeing. They dye in a variety of fashions, some of them, in my opinion, beautiful. Their colors are clear and good.
Prior to Western contact, a major concern of native women was the creation of bark cloth for a multitude of daily uses. Hawaiians slept beneath layers of the sweetly scented kapa. Finely woven mats and decorated top sheets added to their comfort. Kapa was laboriously beaten with wooden and stone tools. Each stroke left subtle impressions on the material, like thousands of tiny stitches. The surface was then dyed or printed as elaborately as many fabrics of today. Men and women of all classes wrapped themselves in this decorated cloth, until new materials and fashions reached Hawaii shores.
Well, when the cotton cloth came in, not the silks. In the beginning, you see all the chiefesses wearing silks and the kings going to Canton for silks and sandalwood. But when the cottons came in and became more available and more plentiful for all the commoners to use and became cheap enough, you will see then that because of the economics, the change, Hawaiians are putting aside their tapa beaters. And the women felt some sort of liberation from the task of beating tapa. And this long slide of the tapa beaters, craftsmanship just simply slid away for centuries and is only now being reclaimed.
Once the floors of Hawaiian homes were covered with layers of fine mats. The women of Ni'ihau were acclaimed for intricate makaloa mats woven from the tough swamp sedge. It would take 6 to 8 months to weave a single mat, but it would be suitable to receive a newborn ali'i child. The making of Ni'ihau mats is a lost art. Into this social disorder the missionaries sailed.
Yours is a mission of mercy. You are to aim at nothing short of covering these islands with fruitful fields and pleasant dwellings and schools and churches, of raising up the whole people to an elevated state of Christian civilization and bringing them to the mansions of eternal blessedness.
We're talking about a period of unleashed social and religious upheaval, a time of unprecedented change. The Makahiki tributes, for example, no longer paid homage to the old traditional gods. Work ethics in the cottage industry began to change to reflect Western needs. The native manufacturers, those things that we might consider today the legacy of excellence, were quickly being replaced by imported manufactured goods from both the West and the East.
Metal was one of the first technologies Hawaiians acquired through trade. While it breathed life into some native crafts, others were made less desirable. In this new economy, the tribute arts were displaced by cash and other commodities. An entire population of native artists were rapidly growing obsolete. As the quality and quantity of crafts declined, many of the exceptional examples left the islands as ceremonial gifts to visiting Europeans. By the 1880s, during King Kalakaua's reign, capes and cloaks had to be recreated using modern materials and sewing techniques. In the early 20th century, cloth and crepe paper were substituted for the feathers of now rare or extinct Hawaiian birds. Wood and stone carving were among the highest art forms in old Hawaii. Achieving outstanding results with stone tools demanded much time and skill, so wooden bowls were relatively small. Iron tools made woodworking easier, and as a result, calabashes grew in size and variety. Carvers of sacred images, the Kahuna Kalaiki'i, employed new precision as they mastered stunning representations of Hawaiian gods. As fantastic and powerful as these images were, they could not prevent the overthrow of the kapu system, which regulated all aspects of Hawaiian life. The traditional gods and religious ceremonies no longer had any official significance. Hawaii's most sacred art pieces were ordered destroyed. A few carved images were secreted away. By the mid-1800s, expert skills like carving, featherworking, and weaving had become nearly lost arts. Centuries of knowledge and ritual were discarded. Religious chants used in the work were silenced. Raw native materials became scarce. But there was never a complete eradication of Hawaiian crafts. Just as in nature, traditions may survive through adaptation. The resilient art of lauhala weaving continues to evolve despite the pressures of the last 200 years. Elizabeth Lee is a master weaver from the Kona area of the Big Island, where she has lived her entire life. There, for generations, her family has been blessed with a free supply of materials for their work. But unlike the mats of old, her lauhala is shaped into a new form.
I have been a weaver for 52 years, starting at the age 7. Well, my brother and I was the one that was taught by my mom, our mom. And at those days, we go out during the day, farming the taro patch in the taro patch. At night, we start staying home, or when it's raining, we stay home and start weaving, my brother and I. At the time when I started weaving, it was about 20 cents a hat. And the plantations were in demand for the hats, and the Chinese stores where we sold the hats too. Because there was no money these days. Money was not as easy as today. And what they have learned that by their weaving of the hats, that's the way they can get their groceries, their necessities, like kerosene, matches, and salt, and all those important things. I'm still learning. Even the many years that I have worked with the lauhala hats, I'm still learning. I would have figured out about close to 1,000 hats that I have made since I was a little girl.
In talented hands, this natural fiber is capable of many vibrant reincarnations to suit changing tastes. Following the craft revival of the 1970s, hat values escalated to hundreds of dollars.
It takes me about 2 weeks to finish a real fine red lauhala hat. And that is because that we pick the lauhala, we clean the lauhala, we strip the lauhala, and then we start working is that we have to match the color of the lauhala. You have to put a lot of effort. Now you take, for instance, the kapa. Now, how much the kapa worth? And how much time do those ladies put time in working with a kapa? And the same thing with the weaving of the lauhala hat. We take time. You need a lot of patience, very much. Some people, they don't see the workmanship in the hat because they have not tried it. And then a lot of people, they think it's a straw. It's something that you just pick up and you just weave it. And some people, they think it's like the olden days. You give with love, In the early days, I can remember that we didn't expect anything like money. We weave because we love to make something for someone. And I wish I can continue carrying on that custom. I do try. Whenever I can give, I like to give.
I chose to work with EAEA because of the end results. The helmets that were woven, the baskets, the fish traps. Using one single type of material, there's a multitude of different things that you can do with it. EAEA and its end results is unique in the world of basketry. The EAEA plant is not hard to find. It's abundant in all the islands in wet, higher elevations. What's difficult to find is the EAEA root. You'll find massive patches of EAEA plants growing, but within the patch, one little area, or maybe just one tree with the vines will have the aerial roots. I've seen areas where there have been beautiful patches of EAEA, and you go back the following week, and the entire forest has been leveled for agricultural purposes.
Gathering materials is only the first lesson toward becoming a truly proficient craftsman. Unraveling the secrets of design and construction is as much a challenge as finding raw materials.
I became interested in working with EAEA mainly because no one else was doing it. I started off stumbling into EAEA, not really knowing what it was all about. Part of progression from a feathered lei to a feathered cape and on to a feathered helmet. When I decided to do the feathered helmet, though, there was very little information on how to actually do it or even how to prepare for it. So it took a lot of experimenting, a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes. Generally, it looks like it's relatively simple weaving, but when you get into pieces like doing a helmet, it's actually very complex. There's really very little documentation on how EAEA was woven. My primary source of information would be the Bishop Museum. I find it absolutely incredible how the Hawaiian people were able to take natural materials out of the forest and create such things of beauty.
In cultures throughout the world, basket making is one of the earliest crafts to develop. Hawaiians excelled at twining simple yet strikingly beautiful forms. Hawaiian basketry, shaped from the tough aerial roots of the EAEA vine, rivals that found anywhere. Before they were replaced by trunks, sea chests, and the like, these hinai or baskets were used to protect and transport valuables. Net-like carriers or koko allowed baskets to be carried easily. The finest wooden and gourd containers of ranking chiefs were often adorned with EAEA mantles. The results, seen here in Patrick's recreations, added beauty, strength, and value.
Working with EAEA gives me a sense of satisfaction in that I'm able to recreate things that were done by master craftspeople of previous times. There's very little financial reward. The time involved far outweighs the prices that one might ask for the piece. The pursuit for excellence is something personal with me. Whatever I do, I try to do the best I can.
Natural gourd containers were incredibly useful to the early Hawaiians. Gourds held their food, their drink, their valuables, and eventually their bones. When beaten, they pulsed with the rhythms of island life. Heaven and earth were said to originate from a giant gourd. At one time, gourds, or ipu, were cultivated on every island. Today, descendants of these plants may not exist. Dr. Bruce Chrisman spends his free time propagating gourds and the knowledge which he hopes will regenerate interest in this lost craft.
One of my favorite hobbies is working with Hawaiian gourds, which is almost a lost art. I've tried to learn how to grow the gourds properly in the harsh environment now existing in Hawaii, how to cultivate the various types of gourds, how to grow good gourds, large gourds, and then how to make hula gourds and how to decorate gourds in the ancient fashion. Although they're little known today, gourds were tremendously important in ancient Hawaii. They had to use gourds for all the utensils that we now find use for with ceramics, metal, plastic, and so on. History tells us that gourds were treated just like babies. They were tended very carefully by the keepers of the very perfect gourds, the ones that were meant for the ali'i or for more perfect purposes. They didn't have pottery. Only very few of the people in Polynesia did have, and the Hawaiians probably perfected this art of cultivating and growing different types of ipu more than any other culture ever has. So they had many different varieties, thick ones, thin ones, big ones, small ones, different shapes for different purposes. Over here we have what's called a hui vai, and that was a common type of gourd used for water. Sometimes it had a little knob at the top to keep your hand from slipping off. Type of shell used in Hawaii here for a stopper. And then this was called an aha haveli. That was something to carry the gourd with over your shoulder or under your hand. Here's another type of gourd here. This is sort of like modern Tupperware, a gourd that had a cover that fit tightly over it to keep insects and things out of it. And gourds were also used as dippers, sometimes to dip up dyes and other substances, and sometimes funnels like these. Thinner funnels were also used for medicinal purposes, such as enemas. And these are platters. You could put a tea leaf on here and lay out a fish for a luau and that sort of thing. And smaller dishes held other foodstuffs and sometimes just poo-poos. Gourds were also used as bowls, called umeke. So there are many, many uses for the ipu in ancient times, and the Hawaiians found many more than we probably know about today.
Ipu pavehe, decorated gourds from the districts of Kauai and Niihau, were wrought with patterns and symbols from ancestral times. Little was known of this practice when Dr. Chrisman began his self-directed research.
The dyeing process in which gourds were decorated has been lost for over 100 years, and there are various mentions of it in texts here and there, all of which are wrong as far as I can find, and that's probably accounts for why no one that I know of has ever been able to well duplicate what the ancient Hawaiian decorated gourds were like.
Even with surgical skills and tools, replicating traditional ipu designs is difficult. Dr. Chrisman has tried burning, resist staining, and dyeing in taro mud to decorate gourds of all sizes and shapes. Each breakthrough or failure is being documented.
Not only were there huge storage containers, but there were beautiful, huge hula drums that must have had an awesome sound, especially played on a heiau such as the one at Haena. And although we have very perfect ancient hula today, we don't have the hula instruments to go along with it. We aren't even close. And I'd really like to see someday that kind of instrumentation recreated.
Although they were an oral culture, the ancient Hawaiians left a wonderful visual record of their world. These were symbols applied to their possessions and to themselves. Images like these were everywhere and are considered to be marks of status, genealogy, or religious devotion.
I guess to be Hawaiian, to feel your own culture, you have to do the craft, no matter what craft it is. I chose copper making because the women did that exclusively. Copper making was important because it was used for everyday life. It was used for their ceremonies, for the clothes you wore every day, for birth, for burial, to cover their idols, I mean, almost anything.
Only a handful of plants were deliberately cultivated by the early Hawaiians as a source of craft materials. Bark from the wauke supplied much of the cloth for the population, but this paper mulberry plant is in short supply today.
What size was that one? The one you just rolled?
5 feet, and we cut it 3.5.
Oh, 5 feet? So
Yeah,
3.5.
very young.
Oh, okay.
Younger than this one here.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. Ooh,
Hey,
aloha,
it's some bulky for
Imoko.
you guys.
Hello, darling. In the beginning, when I first started, frankly, I didn't even know what the wauke plant looked like. I had no idea. I literally started from scratch. I have been at this now for almost 12 years, and it's just only recently that I have broken through on one of the techniques that the Hawaiian woman did in her kapa making. Okay. The whole thing about kapa making that I love is it brought me close to my Hawaiian heritage. I have learned how to be a Hawaiian. I have learned discipline. I have learned what that Hawaiian woman went through to make her kapas, and that's not all that she did. There were many times when I wanted to give up, but every time I lift that hoho, the beaters that they call the round beaters, or the ie kukus, and the fibers started to move, I felt like that Hawaiian woman. I tried to be like her. I wanted to walk in her footsteps because the artistic statement that she left behind was so special, so great, that I said to myself, I'm going to let the world know what this Hawaiian woman did. Every kapa that I have made is a part of me, and that part is Hawaiian. Once you complete a major kapa, and I say something like a kilohana, the feeling I can't describe. I felt Hawaiian. I felt part of the land. I felt like I was back in time, and it was a wonderful feeling.
Puanani Van Dorp represents a new breed of cultural researcher, one totally immersed in the practical and scientific approach to her craft. She works privately, comparing her kapa with samples of ancient Hawaiian bark cloth and those from other Pacific islands. Each detail holds a clue, and each clue becomes an experiment, a challenge to master the virtuosic skills of her ancestors.
The dyeing process is another art form. They dyed their kapas, every color of the rainbow that you can think of. They used gum to preserve them, and these were all natural from the forest. But most importantly, what the Hawaiian achieved is the mordant to fix that dye, which left the colors vibrant. I mean, if you were to go to the Bishop Museum today, you could still see the kapas with their natural colors, and that what the secret was, not the dye itself, but the mordant that they applied to the dyes to fix it. It's another art form.
Life in ancient Hawaiian society was highly specialized. Coastal communities traded with those upland for their necessities. Each island was renowned for its finest goods. Men were the priests, the fishermen, the hunters, and builders. Women produced cloth, mats, baskets, and tended the young. Most artisans looked to the tool makers, men who shaped implements from wood, stone, and shell, the hardest substances available. Even today, a kapa maker must depend on the skills of others to perfect her art.
Somehow,
The fiber is grabbing in the nozzles, and it's not moving as rapidly as I think it should on this EA cuckoo.
You know what I think I'll do, Pur, is that initially I started this off to save time and such. I used a metal tool like this, okay? And I made the grooves in it. Now you're telling me you want it deeper, which I can do. And the only way we can... About 8 years ago, I was told about a cave in Canayo. They said that there was a canoe in it. I heard many stories about canoes being in caves, but this was the first time that it was supposedly worth it to go in. When I looked at the canoe itself, it was in pretty sad condition, but it was a very old canoe. I would say over 200 years old. Upon closer inspection, I noticed that it was done with adze. I could see the adze marks. I could see the canoe was about 80% complete. You could see the work progressing. I could look at the adze marks, and I could tell you the quality of the carver himself. I could tell that he was a very expert carver. He was very skilled. I could tell from the different pieces in the canoe what part of the tree it came from, why he selected it, how it had relationship to the rest of the canoe. In my research prior to this from the books, none of this was revealed. And that was the gift, I think, from the cave, that, or the canoe being in the cave, that it allowed me to see all of these things, something I could never find in a book or nobody else could tell me. This is what I gained from it.
Putting traditional crafts to practical use is the final test of one's skills. Levan's interest in the sport of canoe racing led him to explore the Polynesian art of seamanship. In 1975, he designed and built the Mo'olele, and a few years later, the 45-foot Eala. Both are rare double-hulled sailing canoes of Hawaiian design, made from Hawaiian woods by Hawaiian hands, sanctified through Hawaiian ritual, and sailed with Hawaiian skill. These vessels have traveled the island chain in a voyage of rediscovery.
Some of the aspects of the design in these canoes I worked out with models. I've worked on approximately 9 Hawaiian canoe models, 1 Fijian, 1 Maori that I'm still working on. The techniques that I develop in a model is the same technique you would use in an actual full-size canoe. It saves a lot of time, material, money on a scale of 1 inch to 1 foot. You're still going to be learning the same process. From my point of view, I look at my time as being very precious. I don't have that much time in relationship to the old people. So I use modern tools whenever I'm carving. It's a lot faster, more efficient. I save more wood. 1 core canoe can be done in 1 tree. However, by using modern tools, you can get 2. Or if you're going to laminate, you can get as much as 3 or even 4 canoes out of the same tree. A lot of times, I'll end up using the old tools, whether it be shark teeth or stone, to give it that last finish quality, the last feel. That's so important in my work. When starting off in an image, first you have an idea, you pick the image that you want to carve, the size. Then you go about looking for the right wood for it. Wood is not like clay. When you're working with clay, you can add on or take off. Wood is a one-time thing. You're just taking off. Your eye does not focus on one spot in the carving. It has to take in the whole thing at once. Sometimes I think of it as Zen carving. You put so much into it that you're oblivious to what is around you that's happening. The hardest thing to carve is the key, to capture that essence. You have to do your research, you have to know your culture, you have to capture a feeling, you have to try to have that feeling inside of you, and then you have to project it. If the image is not carved correctly, it's just a glorified piece of firewood. That's what I think about it. I think like for what Pua and I are doing, whether it be copper making, wood carving, and canoes or images, we're discovering or rediscovering what the ancient fathers knew, what the ancients knew. I feel like I walk in their footprints in the sand again. A lot of this knowledge is not written in books. You have to actually go out and do it, and that's the only way you're going to find out what they went through, what they experienced, challenges that they had, and how they overcome it. Well, today I call myself a contemporary Hawaiian. We're not living in a grass shack. We don't walk to wherever we're going. You don't have to wear a malo to say that you're Hawaiian. You can wear Levi's. It's a frame of mind, it's a way of thinking. I can walk into the valleys and sense the spirits, the Aumakuas there, because I've done the crafts, because I've done the arts. We put on sandals, we put on shoes, but we walk the same paths.
The Hawaiian drum is a very revered object. It is a sacred item. It is a kettle drum. It is one contiguous piece of wood, the trunk of a coconut tree, or the trunk of a kamani, or the trunk of the ulu or breadfruit tree. Our early drums would have been likened to perhaps a church bell today. It would summon people to worship. It was also the basic beat for the dance performances. Every drum upon completion goes through a ritual of being accepted within the halau or the temple. So there are foods to be eaten at this ritual acceptance. The drums are given names. In other words, it was not a toy. Today our drums are used only in the context of the dance. In the early Hawaiian culture, we had the tallest drums as being just specifically the temple drums. Those are the drums that were used to call people to worship or to summon people for a ritual or perhaps a human sacrifice was about to occur. We have drums that are being used in the dance today that are more of the temple drum description. Drums of the early traditional hula realm were smaller, and they would have been about 19 inches or so tall. A number of the drums are not of the traditional design anymore. There is a variation and a growth in a new trend, a new direction. The interest and revival in Hawaiian crafts is that everybody seems to be looking for a cultural heritage and identity. There are a number of distractions today, and young people are not gravitating towards their heritage. And we have a problem there. Perhaps I'm interested from the subject of being closer to my grandparents. I admire them very much for their ability to live a very simple and enjoyable life. They spoke Hawaiian on a daily basis. They never used English in their home, and they had a very happy situation there. And so from learning the language, I become interested in all of the other crafts. I do drums because it gives me a good feeling inside to know that I'm accomplishing the same work that someone from the 1800s was doing with perhaps stone tools. I can feel a little bit more attuned to an earlier Hawaiian, someone from the late 1700s, the middle 1800s. So in some respect, I feel a little bit of an escape from the modern world that we live in today, that we're surrounded with, we're just enveloped with. I know that I'm part Hawaiian, and doing this sort of just gives me the inner glow. I feel very deeply enriched and rewarding that I can execute some of these skills. The soul feels happy, there's food for the inside.
Halau Hula are one of the few remaining traditional learning centers for young Hawaiians. Under the direction of Kumuhula Roselle Bailey, children on Kauai relive the skills and values of the past.
Our name is Kaimi Na'auwau o Hawaii Nei, and it means to search for the truth and to be enlightened in things of Hawaii. Our mission is to educate the populace to the understanding of our Hawaiian heritage and culture through hula as its vehicle. A good hula dancer sings, dances, chants, plays, and makes his or her own things. And with that in mind, I've started my students doing craft work. The things that the students learn first to do are the hula-related implements and costuming. So they make their own things. You need patience, for one thing, not only patience in making your implements or the crafts, but patience with oneself. Too often we expect so much so quickly that we become frustrated, and so they learn the life skills of patience, integrity, respect, honesty, appreciation, and really love. It's a time for people to leave the modern technology behind and to reacquaint themselves with what's growing around them and not so very close by either. It's either up in the mountains or down by the ocean. So it's entering another world that is quickly passing. It's like an apprenticeship, and the value of an apprenticeship is that it gives a firm foundation for a person to live life. Hula is the chronicles of the Hawaiian people, so the sounds emitted from the instruments that they make recall certain times in a person's life. When my girls perform, because they make their own things, there is actually an attachment between the instrument and the dancer enjoys showing off the beauty of the instrument and the interpretation of the dance.
Beyond the hula, few showcases exist to display the talents of native artists. One group, the Halinaua Society, is struggling to provide an environment where the Hawaiian legacy of excellence is nurtured. It is the reincarnation of the secret cultural order established by King Kalakaua. Under the leadership of its founder and director, Raki Kaiuuli o Kahihikolo Ehu Jensen, Halinaua offers mature artists a supportive group setting in which to explore traditional themes and materials.
Halinaua means the house of pedigree. It was an organization that was put together to research, to record, and to maintain all of the knowledge that you see behind me. Halinaua, one of its motivating factors to learn 10 generations of genealogy. It is an overwhelming sense of being. It's an overwhelming sense of knowing who you are.
It's my love. Halinaua poses an opportunity for growth of body, mind, and spirit. There needs to be an understanding of what the Hawaiian artists are presenting. It is not quite a linear kind of thing that we're dealing with in Hawaiian art. One piece can be a multi-level experience. There's an opportunity for literalness and great abstraction, which Hawaii always appreciated.
Explain to me, like, it makes more sense.
It really, I think, lies in the spirituality. When you look at the art, it describes their emotion, it describes their passion, it describes that ability to be motivated, but it also has symbolism that brings the viewer into the realm of a native. You have a tendency to understand and feel the soul of the people, to enable each age group, whether young or old alike, to understand their culture through language, through the arts, through crafts. You have to understand the root of it. Craft is the root. The ancient carvers had a great amount of restrictions that had to be followed. Everything was done in secret. Everything had a great amount of ritual and ceremony attached to it. Before the carving, during the carving, and after the carving. The images that I create, to me, are sacred because it commemorates the thought and feeling of our ancestors. Images were portraits of our ancestors. Whether I'm recreating an artifact or whether I'm creating a contemporary piece. That's the important thing to me. Our people of the past worked with wood, stone, and fibers, and shells, and things of the land. With the introduction of modern materials and modern ideas, we have a larger arena in which we can pull from. For example, we don't necessarily have to carve in wood or ohia or koa, but we could also use plastics, we could use metals. These are some of the challenges that we face in the future. This excites me. I guess it would be the process of persistence of culture. Because with the advent of modern man and its tools and technology, we have to re-educate ourselves and try to follow the same thoughts that they had. Trying to keep the same kapus or ideas that they had to follow in order to maintain these kind of works. It is something that I like to coin a phrase taken from our Polynesian brothers. I speak for those who cannot speak.
Craft traditions have always been important for the Hawaiians as a living culture. If the revival of this heritage is to be complete, artists must not only practice the crafts of their ancestors, but also pursue them with the same intense quest for excellence.
For more information about this program, or to receive a copy of the Humanities Viewer's Guide, write to Hawaii Craftsman, P.O. Box 22145, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96823.